everyone, welcome back to Melsclevercrafts, where we're making a spring or summer wreath today using a new flower petal technique. So you can make this wreath with me. It's a technique that I've not used before on my channel, and we're going to be using poly burlap. So the main colors are pink, yellow and white, and these are just going to be the list of supplies that we're using. It's the same that I always use. Alright, so let's get started, and we're pretty much gonna work on the center. So this center, I purchased it, I didn't make this one, and I was just trying to figure out what's the best way to reinforce it when I attach it onto the wreath. Yeah, I don't like mess, so I'm looking at it and looking at how much stuff is falling off while I'm taking it out the packet, how messy it's going to be, because I just don't want to have to deal with the mess. So pretty much to reinforce it, I'm going to be using wire, and I cut the wire, and I'm going to be using just a small piece of that plastic canvas mesh, and I'm going to push it through the center. So I'm just trying to figure out where is the best place to put this, and I pretty much pierced the hole through the flower center using the end of a rat tail comb. Multiple uses for tools, right? So found another use for a rat tail comb if anyone's curious. So push the wire through first, as you can see, and then I'm going to get pretty much just one square from a canvas mesh. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with all this mesh, right? But that's okay. So see, I have the canvas mesh there, and I'm just going to cut one square out because I don't want it to show too much when I cut it. I don't want it to show when I attach it onto the flower center. So it's just going to be one square, and because it's plastic, I'll be able to pull on it and it should give me some kind of reinforcement. So cut that, and then I'm going to push it through the other end of the wire, and then push that end of the wire back through the center, the flower center. So I need to poke a hole through it. So again, back to my trusty tool, my rat tail comb. Great. And this material, it's not very sturdy. As you can see, it's styrofoam and it's not the rigid type, so it definitely needed some reinforcements on there. And just push the wire through, and that will pretty much have your center prepared so when you're ready to attach it. Alright, so now let's get started on cutting the poly burlap mesh. I'm just going to show you how to cut using just the pink, because it's the same technique. And these are cut in 10-inch strips, and I'm using the wood burner. Now when you're using the wood burner, you want to be in a well ventilated area, and I'm cutting straight down through the fibers. Okay, so while you're cutting, you can see the spaces between the fibers, and you're just gonna cut straight down on that in 10 inches strips. So all the strips are gonna be the same sizes, the pink, the yellow, and also the white. And as I said, I'm just showing you how to cut it using the pink. We're not going to go through all the colors. If you want to see how to cut all the colors, you can refer to my other videos, because it's the same technique. But while you're cutting this, always use a glass cutting board, or they suggest using like a metal pan. But I like using the glass cutting board because then I don't have to use another measuring device. I can just use my self-healing mat underneath that as my measuring device to measure out my 10 inches. Alright, so now we're gonna get into making the flower petals for the white. So we're gonna be making pointed petals. So I'm using 2 different petals for this flower. So for the back, we're making the pointed petal, and you're pretty much gonna fold your 10-inch piece of poly burlap into 2 to make a triangle. Then you're going to gather down the center of that, and then you're going to get the 2 points. And I think this is my favorite petal, actually. I'm not sure why, but I guess I just like the symmetry of it. and how it looks, how it comes out. It looks really nice. So most of my flowers so far that I've posted, at least, they're made from some variation of this type of petal. And then you're going to attach it to your wreath frame. So what I like to do is start by attaching first to the crossbars on the frame, and I'm attaching it not to the outermost ring on the wreath frame. So this wreath frame has 4 rings on there. I'm doing it on the 3rd one. So if you're coming from the outside, it's going to be the 2nd one. If you're coming from the inside, it's going to be the 3rd ring. So 2nd or 3rd ring, whichever way you look at it, but coming from the outside, it's going to be the 2nd ring. And yes, it takes me a while sometimes to attach that petal to the wreath frame, and I could edit it out, but I just want to show you that as someone said, when someone sells you these flower wreaths, they're selling it at the premium that they choose to, because the job is not easy. It takes time to make these, and especially when you're trying to get it as perfect. Nothing is perfect anyway, but as symmetrical as possible. It takes time. Okay, so repeating the process again, where well, I'm just gathering my zip ties because I know I'm gonna need multiple of those. So you're gonna have finished end at the top, finished at the bottom right over to top left. Make a triangle, make it as even as possible, and then you're gonna gather from the bottom up to that point of the triangle and shape it to get those symmetrical pointed petals. And then you're just gonna attach it to the bar. So this is a 14-inch wreath frame from the Dollar Tree, and it has 6 of those crossbars. And with those crossbars, I'm going to be attaching 1 white, and in between each crossbars there are going to be 2 extras. So for this outer ring, there are going to be 18 of these white pointed petals on that section alone. So pretty much all my wreath so far, there are going to be 18 petals on that outer ring if it's going to be a 14-inch wreath frame. And I like using the 14-inch wreath frame because it's easy to me, it has a lot of real estate to work with. So now we're gonna show me attaching most of the petals, and that's just me checking out the center and see how big that flower center is gonna cover up the wreath frame. So right now I have the yellow and the pink that's already cut, and what I'm gonna do now is pretty much cut them in half to give you that new petal technique, which is a daisy petal, right? But it's going to be a 2-tone daisy petal, and as you saw, it's going to be the pink on the bottom, the yellow on top, kind of peeking through. So I'm going to pretty much cut it diagonally. I'm not going to use any tool. I'm going to guesstimate it, which is estimating. And with this, it doesn't have to be perfectly even, because that's the side that you're going to gather to meet the petal. Okay, so you can use a ruler or something to measure to get the line straight, but I found that it's not really necessary, and using the rotary cutter is perfectly fine. You don't have to use a wood burner, and if you use a wood burner, it would fuse them together and you wouldn't get that 2-toned petal that I'm trying to achieve. Okay, so after you cut it, you see I'm bringing the yellow down a little bit, it's about an inch from the top, so about an inch or half inch on both sides, so that I can get the pink and the yellow. And then I'm just gonna gather the corners. Okay, so I work from left to right for the most part. So I make one gather in the middle, another on the other side, and then I'm just gonna bring in both corners. So bring in the left, bring in the right corner, and you just do it however you feel most comfortable. And this is the way I do it to get my petals to have that nice daisy kind of shape. And then I don't want mine to fold in the natural pattern, so I kind of fold it in to create like a cup kind of shape. And then I'm gonna secure this using some rubber bands. So these rubber bands, they're the, I guess, clear or transparent rubber bands that I bought to use in my daughter's hair, and it didn't happen. So I'm like, okay, I can use it for craft. And they're fairly cheap. Got them at the beauty supply shop. So those are them. And this allows me to move much faster. So I can secure these and I can make all of them beforehand. And then when I'm done, I can just go through and attach it to the wreath frame. So right now I'm just cutting off the excess poly burlap from there because you don't need that, and it's kind of going to get in the way of you trying to attach it to the wreath frame. So now I'm just adding that rubber band around it, and that's what I'll do with the remaining petals that I have to make. So once more, I'll show you how to make that petal. So you have the yellow on top, about an inch or so from the top. You have about an inch at the top, and on the sides, gather in the middle, and then gather each corner. You get that daisy petal, and you fold it so it curves inside, almost like a scallop, or pretty much an inverted daisy petal. So that's how you get your two-tone daisy petal. And I'm just using my rotary cutter now to cut this extra off, because the first cutter, I don't know what I used it to cut, and it just dulled the blade, so it's not working very well, and I don't feel like I want to buy replacement blades. Okay, so now we're done making all our petals, so now we're going to attach them. And as you can see, I pre-attached the zip ties on here, and when I do that by pre-attaching the zip ties to the plastic canvas mesh, and I didn't show you how I attach the plastic canvas mesh, but there is a video on my channel on how to do that. But yeah, when I attach the zip ties onto the plastic canvas mesh beforehand, it makes life so much easier, and it makes you move faster. So I'm not attaching them side by side because it's easier when I get a little bit of space in between, and then I go over and then I reattach the ones in between those. So I pretty much did the first layer of petals, and I did that first just to see if I could get away with just one layer of petals when I put the flower center on there, because the flower center is really huge. I think it's a 7-inch or 8-inch diameter flower center, but I didn't, so I had to do a second layer of petals. Okay, so with this flower, you're gonna get away with pretty much doing using about a half row of both the pink and the yellow each, because you're not using like a full 10-inch to make one petal for each, you know. It's like 1 10-inch cut in two to make your to make each one of these flower petals. So I'm just attaching the last flower petal, because it's the same process that I use, attaching the last flower petal to this flower to this flower wreath, not flower center yet, Melissa. And then I just arrange them so that the rough edge is underneath the finished ends or edges of the petal. Alright, so now I'm attaching the flower center onto the wreath, and you can see in the center that one square of plastic canvas mesh that I used to reinforce it, and I'm just pushing this through the center of that plastic canvas mesh, and then pretty much flip it over, and then you're gonna twist it and tighten it in place. And I use too much wire, so in the end I had a bunch of wire that I could cut off, but I'm just gonna twist it a few times, and then after that I'm gonna cut the extra off and try to tuck that back in to the wreath so that the extra wire doesn't really hurt anyone. So now I'm just rearranging the petals just to get them to lay as I would want them to and overlay as I need them to. So as I said, the finished edges, I want those exposed, so I try to cover up the unfinished edges with the finished edges and just straighten out the petals as you would like it to be. So thank you so much for watching another tutorial, and I ask that if you haven't already, you like, you share, you subscribe, and you tune into my other videos. So as I mentioned, you can watch how to attach the canvas mesh to your wreath, and also check out my other playlist of country flag wreaths.